Hello, and welcome to the Argyle Financial Controller Forum. My name is Brittany Sullivan with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have some important information to share with you, and then I will turn the floor over to our esteemed opening keynote speaker. First, we would like to take a moment to thank today's sponsors, Blackline, Divvy, and KEYNOTE. Our sponsors are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which includes complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. We also welcome you to stay socially connected during today's event. For those of you who are active tweeters, please use the hashtag ArgyleDigital and follow us on Twitter at ArgyleExecForum. Also be sure to follow Argyle on LinkedIn for special announcements. I would also like to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which we have curated based on the feedback we've received over the years from our members. We have worked closely with our speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints during the session today, and we truly appreciate our members' support of this policy. Finally, and most importantly, we would love to hear from you. So during each session, we encourage you to submit your questions and comments in the Q&A box on your screen. Following each presentation, we have set aside time for our speakers to weigh in on your questions. Thank you again for joining us. Now let's get started. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Ashok Manthina, AI strategist and author for AI for Finance. We're excited to have Ashok with us for his opening keynote titled Finance and IT Collaboration for Data Protection. Welcome, Ashok, and over to you.
Thanks, Brittany. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ashok Manthina. I'm an AI strategist. I basically work in implementing AI for corporate finance. It could be your forecasting, budgeting, or anomaly detection in our controller groups. But with the advent of AI and all the data, now we get the data protection, data security issues. So today's topic is about how do we get that data strategy correct, the data protection strategy correct, with all the SaaS systems now or the AI systems coming into picture. Once upon a time in 2017, this is almost 6 years ago, pre-COVID times, there was HBO got hacked. If you remember it, the headlines in the websites and newspapers, they were like this, right? The unaired episodes of Game of Thrones got released online. That's the big headline that we have seen because that's what we like, the Game of Thrones, which is a TV series. There was a financial implication for HBO because of that. For example, they have the whole subscriptions based on releasing each episode each week. But since the hackers released it, now they are forced to release it, all episodes in 1 week. I'm sure there was a big financial implications because of doing it. But this is not it. There's a lot of other information that got leaked as well, which has a bigger impact. For example, financial info of each episode got released. What it means is all the production costs, how much it costed for the VFX, the pre-production, post-production costs, everything, all detailed information of each episode got released. This is the strategy, right? This is a competitive advantage of a production company, this financial information, and that got all leaked. The actor contracts got leaked, how much they pay for each actor. And once that information is leaked, it's really difficult for HBO to now negotiate contracts with actors because everyone knows the other, how much everyone is getting paid. The salary details of the top executives got leaked. We know how much HBO CEO gets paid per year. It's all in those hacking leaks. Deloitte, which is basically helping HBO then in various activities, even their contracts got leaked. So now the whole world knows how much HBO pays for each Deloitte consultant, for each contract. It's quite an embarrassment for Deloitte as well at that point of time. If you think about it, it's not just the financial implication, right? Now the competition of HBO got the inside look of the financial strategy. They know how much they pay for each actor, for production costs, and now everyone knows how much it costs to make an episode and how many people are viewing it. So now they know the whole the profit and loss for each show. It's a big embarrassment for HBO, and also it will take years for them to recover from this. The silver lining is it also exposed the vulnerabilities of a lot of media companies, because media companies are not tech companies, right? I mean, in terms of implementing all the security, now this hack actually exposed it. So a lot of companies in this segment, they realized all these weaknesses and started taking some action. But this is just as an example, right? HBO, Game of Thrones, big names. So we know, we read in papers, but there are increasingly more and more companies are impacting. If you haven't got impacted, that means you won't get impacted in the next few years. And I personally know a few companies which are in 50 million, 100 million revenue companies that got ransomware attacks, right? Their data gets stolen and they are asked for money to provide that. Otherwise, the information gets leaked, and these companies go bankrupt or they go in a big financial liability doing this. And we don't hear about them because they are smaller companies. So everyone is at risk, basically. So why is data security more critical now than any time in the past? Is because the first thing is all our systems has become more of SaaS, software as a service. We take a URL, we log in, and we start using it. Earlier, it used to be on-prem systems. That means your company owned the server and your IT used to go maintain the servers, install the software on it, and then maintain all the integrations from the server so that you have access within the network. But now, because of the ease, because of the cost of maintenance, now we are all moving to software as a service, not just smaller software, right? Even Oracle and SAP, all these softwares have become SaaS now. And this also introduces some risk if the integrations or if the vendor is not maintaining the security correct. So it's not just your risk, your practices, it's also now your security is dependent on your vendor's practices as well. Remote work. Now finance teams are increasingly accessing data. I'm sure some of you guys are going to work, again, 3 days a week, 2 days at home, or from a coffee shop, from airport. So increasingly we are working from everywhere, from all kinds of networks. How do we access data? Of course, we connect to VPN sometimes, but again, your chats are mostly, you can even do it without a VPN, right? How do we protect our data when most of our workforce is working remote and working from different networks and different parts of the world? Cybersecurity threats have becoming evolving and becoming much more sophisticated. If you're expecting to get an email from a king of a country that they can't move their money and they need your help, that is past. So you still get those emails, but now we know if you see a king and if they think about money, we know, okay, this is a hacking or cybersecurity threat. This is a fraud, but they're much more sophisticated now than the past, and they keep evolving. So if you're reading about all these threats and you think you know, and all of a sudden it will be in a very new form, which we have never realized. Working with consultants, it has always been there, but it has been increasing for ad hoc basis. We use a lot of third-party resources. What if they are not on their network? What if they are not using your company's laptop and using their own laptop or their company's laptop? So how do we ensure the data security is there while working with the third-party services? Let's delve deep into various security threats. First, hacking and cybersecurity threats. They come in various ways, including malware. You click on .exe file or whatever file, it gets installed on your system, boom, and then all your data is gone. So, and malware has been a very real threat for a lot of companies. So companies constantly monitor their emails, all the documents to make sure there is no malware. Phishing attacks, ransomware, as I said, the data gets the data gets hacked, and then you're demanded some kind of ransom so that the more leaks are not happening. And then there is DDoS attacks that keeps happening on your web traffic. If you're an e-commerce company, if you're and that it impacts your revenue right away with DDoS attacks. Insider threats are real. They can involve your employees, contractors, or vendors who have access to your data. And it can be data theft, right? I mean, leaking companies' financial information is data theft. There could be a fraud, or it could be a sabotage of the data, right? Deleting some data set, that's also a sabotage that can impact your business operations. Social engineering has been evolving much faster. You can get phone calls from someone, emails from your CFO. Again, if you're a bigger company, you have much more secure form of communication. For example, your CFO could ping you on your chat groups, Teams or Slack. But if you're a smaller company, the operations usually happen on phone calls. Your CFO can just call you directly and say, hey, I need this report. Can you send it to my email? So someone impersonating is much easier as we are much more informal in communication. So, and also sending up sensitive financial information and storing them. These are all the factors that really impact our security of the data. Physical security breaches, and you might think this is not happening, but there has been an organized crime targeting tech workers. So if they place their laptop in the car gets broken into, laptops get stolen, and they are sold at much higher price because based on the region, because now this is an avenue for the hacker to get into the system, into the company's network. So those laptops have much bigger value. So physical security breaches have become much more wider these days. And third-party security risks, if we're using all these SaaS softwares, other integrations, and properly, if you're not properly vetting them, that becomes our security risk as well. Any questions so far on various security threats? Okay. So what are the best practices, right? How do we avoid these security threats? I'll start from the early wins, simple wins, the low-hanging fruits for us to actually have a better strategy to avoid them. One is strong password policies. It looks easier, but this is very mandatory for us to implement it. Stronger, longer passwords are very important. We can work as finance teams, we can work with our IT teams to ensure that this is being implemented right away. Second is encryption and secure communication. Again, you have to make sure your IT team is encrypting all the integrations between the SaaS systems or between any of these communications to make sure they're all secure communication. And implementing access control is very important. We all think we have access control, right? But there has been a big gap here is all our financial systems. We might have multiple systems, right? We might have an ERP, and then we have like a consolidated system. We can have a BI system to analyze the data. Ideally, we should have one security system that ensures the same access in all these systems. For example, someone having access to company level access in ERP should have the same access in BI so that it is all maintained and consistent. But we don't have right now. Each system maintains its own security. For example, ERP will have its own responsibilities and individual security access. Same way, BI system will have their own legal entity-based access. So how do we ensure this proper control? So first, companies and finance teams need to realize security should be much more centralized across all the financial systems and across all the data that contains the finance data. And for that, there needs to be products that needs to be implemented. There are not many products in the market right now that gives you that centralized security access control. Again, it's also because maybe finance teams think that it's not really useful or helpful at this point of time, but it is. Conducting regular security audits is very important. Collaborate with your IT and make sure you have this every quarter, every two quarters, or every year to make sure. And also you can bring in third party to have these security audits, investigate all the incidents that happen. That way, you know what is happening and also know what is happening outside in the market so that you can implement some of these measures within your company. Training employees and consultants is very important. Again, this has to be done every quarter or every 2 quarters making sure they know all the best practices. In the next slide, we'll talk about what are the items that needs to be included in this training. And it has to be for both employees and consultants. You can't just restrict to your employees. It has to be with your consultants and vendors as well. And step 6, you need to have a process to do a vetting on all the vendors and softwares. It cannot be like an ad hoc basis doing some analysis. Your company needs to have a policy how you do it. There are various ways to do the due diligence. There are some certifications like SOC 2, which you can go through and see if they have covered everything in there. And finally, you need to have a plan. When something happens, you can't just go find things to do then. You need to have a plan, what needs to be done. What if the sensitive information gets leaked? How to curtail that information? How to limit the exposure of it? You need to have a good plan. And also your team needs to be aware of what needs to be done within finance, within IT. The separation of duties needs to be known, like what needs to be done on finance, what needs to be done on the IT side. All right. So I quickly want to go through what needs to be included in the training for finance teams. First, password security, making sure password is important, even though you can have a policy of having 20 alphabets in a password, but making sure it's not easily guessable is very important. So that needs to be included. Data handling is very important in terms of how you transmit data, how you store data, how you dispose of data. Are you storing any data on your laptop, or do you have shared folders that are much more secured in terms of having the collaboration? So these are very important, and proper handling needs to be done of this sensitive information. Social engineering, how to handle unsolicited emails or phone calls, requests for personal information. All this needs to be trained, and best practices. Your employees needs to know the best practices, how to avoid these social engineering attacks. Overall, in like security awareness, trained on the latest security threats, best practices, that is very important. And you need to encourage your employees to report any activities, right? Even if it is little suspicious, they have to report it to the supervisor and the security teams. So implement a process where it's easy for them to report an activity. It could be just a simple click and saying, oh, this email, this looks very suspicious. Even if you have detected, maybe your coworker might not detect it, right? So it should be immediately reported to the respective authorities there. Incident response, again, once the incident happened, how do we respond to it? Containment, investigation, and reporting, and how do we do this on a no blame investigation, right? And also compliance, and understanding the importance of compliance and then the potential financial implications is very important for all the employees to know what's the impact of a security threat. And now what to do when the breach happens? I mean, as I said, we can't just go then and see what we can do or hire some third-party company to come and help us do it. We should have a process. And again, as a finance team, ask your IT team, do we have a process in place? Or if not, how do we ensure there's a process in place, and also training involved as part of that process? First, notify your relevant parties. That is very important. Something has happened. If you're the IT and if you know something happened, inform your finance teams, inform your leadership, vendors, and the regulatory bodies if needed, right away, as soon as possible. This will help them take corrective actions in their other teams, so they can notify the other teams as well. So this is very important first step to do. And investigate the breach. Now everyone gets involved, all hands on deck in terms of what is the extent of the breach, what is the data that has been compromised, and how that happened, right? What's the root cause? So this investigation needs to happen as soon as possible. And containing the breach, as you know, something has been leaked or something has been hacked, how do we prevent further damage? You can shut down your systems or isolate the network from that affected area. That could be some of the steps you can take to contain the breach And this is very important for you to resume operations right away. And this is the remedial action that you have to take to normalize your operations, right? You can patch your vulnerabilities, change passwords, update security protocols. And so what is key is contain the breach, and then you have to restore your normal operations, because you are also having a lot of loss of revenue if you stop your operations. So these two are very important to start with. Updating security protocols once you investigate, once you contain the breach, to prevent further breaches right away. You have to take that action, update your encryption, or implement multi-factor authentications right away. So this will help you prevent any future breaches happening. Also, as I said, post-incident review is very important. Collaborate with your IT collaborate with your finance teams and your data teams. Conduct a no blame post-incidents, because again, as we said, the incidents are becoming much more sophisticated. The cybersecurity threats are becoming much more sophisticated. So if something happened, it could be because of someone not knowing how to react to it. So no blame post-incident review is very important to find the areas where it needs a process improvement to prevent the future breaches. So any questions on what needs to be done?
Great. Thank you so much, Ashok. We did have quite a few questions come through, and thank you so much for such an insightful presentation. We could go ahead and take some of those questions now. This first question asks, the new safeguards policy puts more emphasis on customer and data protection. So what are you doing to protect your customer and data information?
Right. Customer information is one, right? Customer information has a bigger implication in terms of it's illegal as well. You have to protect the customer data, and now we have all these regulations in doing it. So protecting customer data is the top priority. But at the same time, if you're focusing only on customer data and not your financial information, that's a bigger threat. We have seen in the HBO case how their financial information, which is their competitive advantage, has been leaked. So making sure the first priority is getting the customer data protected, and also the financial information. So that is more important.
Excellent, thank you. This next question asks, what amount of investment can we expect to make to convert to AI?
It's a very generic question. I mean, AI is a very generic term, right? Now we can use it for forecasting. We can use it for anomaly detection in our journal entries. Like we have these millions of journal entries in our ERP, and how do we know everything is correct? How do we detect it, right? We can use AI there. Now there is chat GPT kind of applications coming in for finance, where you can run reports using just a command, just a English sentence. So AI is different, but the kind of investment we do, it's not going to be AI directly, but it's going to be AI enabled software. Your ERP will have an AI, your financial systems will have an AI. On top of it, your user interface to all these financial systems will be AI. But what I see so far is there is a lot of forecasting use cases, a lot of audit use cases that are using AI in corporate finance. And if you have any questions, connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can talk more about how you can get started on AI in various use cases for finance, particularly for corporate finance.
Great, thank you. And just, since you mentioned some use cases, are there any, studies or white papers that you could think of that you could recommend in regard to data security?
I do publish a lot of use cases on my LinkedIn. Please connect with me, and I share a lot of information there on both AI, data security, and all the finance technologies.
Perfect, thank you. This next question, so can you make any recommendations on how to get the IT department more involved in stressing the importance of data security to the entire staff?
So I'm assuming this question is being asked by a finance person, right? I think IT is the responsibility of the security lies with IT, right? Because if you think about it, the breach always comes from some kind of a technology, either whether it's an email, your email client that you're using, or the integrations part of it, the encryption part of it. So IT is 100% responsible for security. And if they are not, make sure you escalate that and have a meeting, ask for the processes, right? Ask for what is our process in ensuring that our data is secure, both customer data, and if you're very much focused on finance, ask them, how are we ensuring our data is not being hacked, our finance data is protected? So that's a good stepping point. Just schedule a meeting with them, talk to them, and ask them what's our existing process. If not, then ask them to come up with a process to how do we ensure, including the password policies to post-incident investigation. All these processes needs to be in place.
Great, thank you. It looks like we have time for a couple more questions.
Sure.
This next question asks, should a breach occur, at what point should employees, vendors, etc., be notified?
So immediately, right? Customers is a different question. I know there are a lot of other nuances that needs to be considered, but I think as you delay it, your reputation also gets impacted. And we have seen in a lot of cases where a big company gets impacted, all the customer data gets impacted, and they come back and say after 10 days or after a month that your data got leaked a month ago is a bigger risk. Now, a lot of companies are ensuring that if they know who got impacted, they are right away informing that specific customers that your data got impacted, and this is what we are doing to avoid it. So if you have a list of your customers who got impacted, it's better to impact. It's a reputation issue as well at the same point. And also there is also legal framework, what needs to be done right away in all these. We have in GDPRs and we have all the California protection. So all these have protections in place where, and they also inform you when to inform your customers and your stakeholders, particularly within your company. You have to inform your other team members so that they take the action right away.
Great, thank you. And we have one last question. Do you recommend a certain password saver software or something to help?
I can't really recommend a software like a password protection. Password protection softwares are good so that you don't have to, and particularly in an organization, if you think about it as a finance user, we think it's our personal password protection. But in finance or in any of the systems in a company, they have multiple passwords that needs to be changed every month. And where are we saving all these passwords, right? If someone wants to know the password within the company for something, how do they know? Do you transmit it by an email, or do we send that password in all these systems with their admin account have passwords, right? So so your company needs to ensure that there should be a software that saves all these passwords, all these system admin passwords. And personally also, a lot of people started using the softwares to save all yours, so you don't have to write it somewhere or forget. It's always better to have a good process personally as well to protect those passwords. Thanks. And someone asked, did I understand correctly, laptops are a bigger risk than desktops? They are, right? I mean, when you have a laptop, but it's a convenience. Right now, we can't move back to our desktop because you can't carry it everywhere. Now you have to go to work. You have to come back to home and start working again. If you have a desktop, you can't really carry it. So laptops are convenience. We can't go back to desktops, but of course they are a risk.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Ashok. And that is all the time we do have for questions, but thank you so much again for such an insightful presentation. I also want to thank everyone who joined us for this excellent session. This session, along with all of today's content, will be made available on demand following the event. Thank you so much again, Ashok.
Thank you, everyone.